things that were just miserable. I don't know how else to put it. Just miserable. But at the same time, Ezekiel got to see what the temple was going to be. And I don't think that, seeing that and seeing what the final temple was going to be, I think it was the final temple, it's just amazing to know where our God is going to reign. And at the same time, Ezekiel knew who God was. I mean, why else would you do but the things that he did? Tie yourself up, build little models, all kinds of fun things like that. So I thought we would do 197 in your books. Because this is what Ezekiel knew. Okay, 197. Rejoice, the Lord is King.
Rejoice, the Lord is King, your Lord and King adored. Rejoice, give thanks and sing, and triumph evermore. Lift up your heart, lift up your voice, rejoice again, I say.
Every week. We've been bouncing around for a long time. If you don't remember, it's been, probably 2 years ago now, we set out with the goal of doing a quick survey of the whole Bible. And we didn't make it very far. And we ended up after, so I guess we were probably a year and a half or so in, and we got to Jeremiah. And when we finished Jeremiah, that was right around the new year, and we said, well, we'll take a couple weeks and we'll look at a few verses about the church and what the church is, and that took months. And then we said, well, we'll do a couple other things. We've been studying a few things here and there, and most recently we took what was going to be 1 week to talk about just the nature of the Bible, and that took a month. I don't know about you. I always enjoy getting together with you guys to study the Word. And I enjoyed our study of the church. I enjoyed our study of the Word. But I am very much ready to just get back to studying a book and letting the book set the course for us. And so We're going to pick up where we left off. So the next book is Ezekiel. Now, I know some of you have just spent a very long time studying Ezekiel. So I'll say this, and you just need to take this in its historical context, given the trajectory of things the last couple of years. The goal is a survey. The goal is not to do super in-depth study. Some of you have been studying Ezekiel, so you'll have lots to share with those of us who haven't been. But we will try and move at a reasonable pace. So my goal is actually that we would consider the first 3 chapters of Ezekiel tonight. So you got your Bible. Please open it up. Somebody laughed already, I heard you. Ezekiel chapter 1. And I need somebody who's willing to read a good chunk here. I'd like somebody to read 21 verses. So somebody who's willing to do that. You want to read first 21 verses? Nice and loud for us, if you would. And here's what as you follow along and listen. Ezekiel chapter 1 is an amazing picture of God and his throne. I'm not going to try and tell it to you because you're about to hear it. But maybe also just remember what we talked about a couple weeks ago from the book of Ecclesiastes and the need to come and just listen. And if nothing else, if we get nothing else out of tonight, I hope that you just be awestruck by God and his glory. I think that's actually I think it's a major theme throughout the whole Bible, but particularly in Ezekiel. Ezekiel wants the people who are reading his book to just be amazed at who God is. So let's go ahead. We'll do this in 2 sections. We are going to read all of chapter 1. We'll start with chapter 1, verse 1 through 21.
The visions of the 4 figures. Now it came about in the 13th year on the 5th day of the chapter 1, 1? Oh, did I say 13? Apologies. I'll start over. Now it came about in the 30th year on the 5th day of the 4th month while I was by the river Chebar among the exiles, the heavens were opened and I saw visions of God. And on the 5th of the month, in the 5th year of King Jehoiakim's exile, the word of the Lord came expressly to Ezekiel the priest, son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Chebar, and there the hand of the Lord came upon him. As I looked, behold, a storm wind was coming from the north, a great cloud with fire flashing forth continually, and a bright light around it, and in its midst something like glowing metal in the midst of the fire. Within it there were figures resembling 4 living beings, and this was their appearance. They had human form. Each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight. Their feet were like a calf's hoof. They gleamed like burnished bronze. Under their wings, on their 4 sides, were human hands. As for the faces and wings of the 4 of them, their wings touched one another. Their faces did not turn when they moved. Each went straight forward. As for the form of their faces, each had the face of a man. All 4 had the face of a lion on the right, the face of the bull on the left. All 4 had the face of an eagle. Such were their faces. Their wings were spread out above. Each had 2 touching another being and 2 covering their bodies. And each went straight forward. Wherever the Spirit was about to go, they would go without turning as they went. In the midst of the living beings, there was something that looked like burning coals of fire, like torches darting back and forth among the living beings. The fire was bright, and the lightning was flashing from above, and the living beings ran to and fro like bolts of lightning. Now as I looked at the living beings, behold, there was one wheel on the earth beside the living beings for each of the 4 of them. The appearance of the wheels and their workmanship was like sparkling beryl, and all 4 of them had the same form, their appearance and workmanship being as if one wheel were within another. Whenever they moved in any of their four directions, without the turning as they moved. As for the rims, they were lofty and awesome, and the rims of all four of them were full of eyes round about. Whenever the living beings moved, the wheels moved with them, and whenever the living beings rose from the earth, the wheels rose also. Wherever the Spirit was about to go, they would go in that direction, and the wheels rose behind them, for the spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. Whenever those went, these went. Wherever those stood still, these stood still. And whenever those rose from the earth, the wheels rose beside them, for the spirit of the living beings was in the wheels.
Okay. All right, you got it. Now, how many of you tried to imagine that as it was being read? A couple of you? Did some of you give up partway through? Just yeah, Ruth, you gave up. Yeah, that is not. It's very descriptive, right? And that's important because obviously this is God's word, and God doesn't just tell us stuff for no good reason. And yet, at least for most of our imaginations, those of you who tried to imagine it, how did it go? I mean, do you feel like you got a pretty good mental picture going? A couple of you do, yes.
A little confusing.
A little confusing, a little hard to get your mind around exactly what this looks like. Okay, yeah, kind of a gyroscope going on here. So, couple things. Let me just give us a little historical context, and then we'll talk a little more about the vision. We don't know exactly the date of Ezekiel's writing, but here's a couple things that we know. We know that Ezekiel was taken, right, as an exile. So he was taken from the land of Judea, and he seems to be exiled probably shortly after Daniel goes into exile. His ministry is somewhere right around the time as the temple is going to be destroyed, is where he is. So his ministry and Jeremiah's ministry are overlapping, if you remember Jeremiah. But Jeremiah is in a different place, right? Where's Jeremiah? Do you remember?
He was in Jerusalem.
He's back in Jerusalem. Yeah, he's back in Judea. And Ezekiel is in Babylon. So he is among the people that Jeremiah was actually addressing when Jeremiah wrote Jeremiah 29, and he writes to the people who are in Babylon. Ezekiel would be among them. What else do we know about Ezekiel based on what we just read?
He's the son of Buzzy.
Okay, that helps. True. And he's a priest. The fact that he's a priest is going to be a big deal. As we go through the book of Ezekiel, you'll see that he takes an interest in the book of Leviticus. He makes somewhat frequent references to the book of Leviticus, a book that many of us neglect in our own devotional reading, but he found it quite inspirational. And he is very interested in the future of the Levites and of the temple, and that makes sense given who he is, that the Lord would reveal these things to him. So back to our image that Ezekiel is painting for us of God and the throne. What stood out to you as that was read?
The eyes have it.
The eyes have it. Yeah, eyes everywhere. That's kind of odd. Yes.
Wheels connected to these beings.
Wheels connected to the beings. Yep. Like, are these robots? Are these, we don't know of any other animals with wheels connected. Yep. What else stood out? Yes.
Human form.
Yeah, human form, along with non-human forms.
There was that too.
That's what's interesting to me, because you have one sentient being for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
I wonder about the others.
You want to know about the others? Yeah. So, what are the creatures that are mentioned there? Real quick, and then Steve will come to you. We got a man, an ox, a lion, and an eagle, Did somebody say ox or bull to me? Okay, yeah. Why are those animals? Any idea?
They match the standards for the tribes, I think.
Okay, right. So many of the tribes have an animal associated with them. I do think that there are tribes with these. We definitely don't have all 12, right?
No, but those would be the 4 leading ones.
Okay, perhaps.
When the camp of Israel was camping, the tabernacle was set up, the Levites established their camp,
Okay,
and then Israel was divided into 4 groups of 3 tribes, and they were in the cardinal directions
okay,
from that camp,
got it.
and the
Yep.
lead, I guess for lack of a better word, tribe
Corresponds to those
had
animals.
that standard.
Okay,
And interestingly enough, the standard of eagle actually originally was serpent.
okay.
Servant or servant?
Serpent. Yep.
Does
Yes.
it have anything to do with the 4 Gospels and a picture of Christ?
Ooh, people have made that connection. Yeah, yep.
The notes in my study Bible say that composite fantastic figures in these classic combinations have been found in Mesopotamian and Egypt in iconography. The idealized strength of each figure were thus presumed to reside in the living creature so described.
Yeah,
That's kind of odd that they're in other cultures.
yeah. I want to come back to that. I think it's a really. I was going to try and project this, but the image quality is not very good. But if somebody wants to come see some of these afterwards, yeah, we have actually other ancient Near Eastern cultures depicting these in their or things like this in their drawings, which is interesting. Yeah.
Well, I noticed that the preeminent position is the image of God, man.
Okay.
Then you have courage on the right, strength on the left,
Okay.
and majesty behind.
Mm-hmm.
So, that is-
Okay. Yep. Could
And
be.
the fire and the smoke and the lightning and thunder and
Yeah, which sounds like Mount Sinai to me. That's what it reminds me of. Polly, you had your hand up?
The study Bible I have, the 4 faces in the vision prefigure the 4 aspects in which God voice speaks. The 4 faces in the the 4 faces in the vision prefigure the 4 aspects in which God would reveal himself when he is incarnated himself in human flesh as Messiah.
Yeah.
On the right is the lion, symbol of kinship. On the left is the ox, symbol of the servant. The face of a man represents his perfect humanity. The eagle soaring overhead symbolizes his deity.
Okay. So one of the things that I've found in my as I read about this is there doesn't seem to be total consensus about exactly why these animals, right? So yes, it could be the standards, but we don't actually have mention of those associations until kind of later. So is that what Ezekiel was thinking? Maybe. Makes good sense. Could it be, I have another note from somebody else that, man being intelligence, the lion being power, the ox being service, and the eagle swiftness? Or could it be related to the Gospels? It could be. Could it be that these are sort of the pinnacle creatures of their class? Are you guys playing spoons over there or something? Fly? Okay. Yeah, there's no flies mentioned in the text. There could be, it could be numerous different things that are being symbolized here. Yeah.
One of the things that's interesting is that all 4 of these faces and the wheels and everything were led by the Spirit.
Okay.
So it's almost like they weren't, the Spirit was showing them where to go. And I thought, I always imagine, because it says they never turned their heads. So if the Spirit moved to the right, well, there was a lion facing that way. And if it moved to the left, there was,
Okay.
and moved behind, there was an eagle. So everywhere the Spirit went, the Spirit moved them. The
Okay.
Spirit guided them to which direction, and they were never facing away from where the Spirit led them.
Hmm.
They never had to turn, they were always ready
Always a
for it.
face.
Yeah, always facing it.
Okay. Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
Good. Cool. Very, very interesting. I agree. Yes.
It's amazing how you can read it and find something you've not seen before.
Indeed.
I've always thought that this vision, the one corresponding in Isaiah, and of course the one in first chapter of Revelation, there seems to be some correspondence there of some
It
sort.
does.
And my thought, well, that's a throne room of God seen, and yet here he mentions that whenever the creatures moved from the earth, that the wheels went with them. So there's something else going on there.
Yeah. Okay. Adele.
Well, could that be part of the new heavens and the new earth, though? Go piggybacking on what Roger said,
Okay.
because they came up from earth, so,
As they come up from the earth.
yeah.
I think so. I think the imagery is. I do think that there is tabernacle imagery here, which makes sense. With the presence of God, the throne of God. We're talking about these angelic beings, which again fits with the tabernacle, fits with the ark, fits with Eden, because Eden, the tabernacle is a microcosm of Eden, and so to have creatures and to have pinnacle creatures there as part of the throne, God being seated above the earth is actually all very, very fitting with what we read about in the Psalms. I want to go back to what Terry brought up. We have these images from the ancient Near East of creatures that have multiple faces and have, one extremities of like an ox or something like that. Sometimes they actually have wheels, and they are a throne of sorts. So this isn't. I'll try and put them up there. Because some of you are looking at me like, Pastor Jesse got crazy. So here's one. I want to say I don't think there's any perfect parallels to this, but there are some parallels. What do you think we should make of that? What significance, if any, would there be to the fact that this imagery actually probably would have been a lot easier for an ancient Near Eastern mind to imagine than for our modern Western minds? What do you think we might make from that? Okay, I thought I saw.
How would it be easier for them?
Well, okay, just because if these are the kinds of things that they saw, and again, these are not one-to-one replicas, but they're not the kind of thing I grew up looking at. Okay, so here's some of these images. So you've got up here, seems to be a throne-like structure. These are kind of lion-like creatures with human-like heads. Right? These are from the gates of, I think they're from the gates of Babylon. They used to be in the British Museum of Natural History. You got these winged lion, human head. This is pretty weird stuff, right? I don't know about you, but none of my toys looked like this when I was a kid. So that's what I'm saying. If you grew up seeing these every time you walked into the city, and then you read Ezekiel's vision, it might not feel quite so out of place as it does to us. That's what I mean. It might be easier for them to.
What are these pictures of?
There are a variety of pictures from ancient. There are, as far as I know, these are all either Assyrian or Babylonian, and they are. These ones are all wall carvings. So.
Artwork then?
Artwork, yes, that you would find in their cities and in their temples. And then this is actually a picture. So the entryway into Babylon, they have the gates, But the Assyrians had very similar ones, so I'm not sure if these are Assyrian or Babylonian. Jessica and I had a neat opportunity. I went and took a class in London, and we went to Paris the week before because we're like, we're probably never going to do this again. As we at the time, the Louvre had the ones from Assyria, and the British Museum of Natural History had the ones from Babylon. Now they're giving them all back, so I'm not sure you'll be able to go see them anymore without going to Iran.
What's this in the upper right?
You know what? I can't really make that one out very well. That's why I wasn't sold on the image quality. So some of these you can say, all right, I kind of see some similarities, some of them not so much. What would be the significance if to the similarities, if there is one? Maybe there is none.
Well, I think you have to go back to Noah in that
Okay.
these cultures all derived from his ancestors, and they settled all in the same area, and I think that shows a commonality in the culture of God, but they just twisted it a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, because all of them had, I mean, the similarities again between all of these.
Yeah.
The only common thing they have is the fact of Noah.
Okay.
So Noah had a knowledge of God. Noah, we don't know that Noah didn't see the same kind of thing because he just never wrote about it. Who knows? But I mean, he had a close relationship with God.
Yeah.
And all of history kind of passed down through him. So all of these people had to have that same type of knowledge at one point in their history.
Okay.
And they just twisted it to whatever they wanted it to be, but it was still remained similar.
Okay. Yep. So if I could summarize what I think Fernando's saying is, you've got one very reasonable explanation is that there is some semblance of truth to these things, that they reflect realities about which Noah and his predecessors knew, and those were right, and the biblical depictions are real, and these are more or less accurate depending on how close they might connect. So that's definitely one way to perceive a relationship if there is one. Anybody else have a thought on what we do that? I think I have some more. Again, these are not great.
How close?
Well, that guy's got eyes all over him. He was kind of interesting. And so does this thing, whatever that is.
Trying to remember, how close to being designated cherubim or cherub or cherubim, being plural, are the four creatures?
How close to being designated cherubim are they? I think. Well, let me see if I can find.
I mean,
6 wings,
6 wings is like the seraphim.
faces and eyes.
Faces, eyes.
chubbier.
Cherubs are supposed to be chubbier.
The reason I asked
Yeah, yeah.
that, it just occurred to me that, when you think about it, the presence of the garden was pre-flood, and that Noah had first, at least, maybe had, this is a lot of assumption, obviously, access to the gate where the cherubim were stationed
Okay,
of the
sure.
garden.
That's interesting. Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about the same creatures, and I don't know that we are.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thought. Polly's got a note to that effect.
Well, no, just what he was saying, that they are that they are considered cherubim.
I was trying to see. My initial reaction was yes, they are, and then I couldn't find the word
And then you
as
have
I
the
skimmed it.
recreation of the cherubim on the ark later, obviously, after the flood.
Okay, Adele.
I have more of a question.
Okay.
Verse 9.
Yeah.
Their faces did not turn when they moved. Each went straight forward. If the faces were in different directions,
Yeah.
but they all went straight forward. That's what I can't wrap my mind around. I have ever since I've read this
Okay, so their wings touch one another.
before that.
Their faces.
Because the faces were facing 4 different directions, no matter where they moved, they're moving forward.
Right. Exactly. How do you do that? I can't wrap my mind around that.
So I'm not sure if they're all, okay, I'm not sure I'm imagining it right either. I've always just thought somebody's facing forward all the time, not necessarily that all of them are always facing forward. That they were all facing forward and they don't turn?
They're facing 4 different directions, but they're all facing forward, and when they move, nobody's going back.
I don't know, you're gonna have to get somebody who does quantum physics to figure that one out. I don't know.
Why would you assume nobody's going backwards?
Well, if you're going this way, then the face would be facing forward, the others would be going backwards, and then if you were going this way,
Well, see, that's what doesn't make sense, because
Yeah.
they're all.
So, okay, all right, I got Mark and yes.
So, I mean, looking at creatures, I'm just wondering, we're trying to picture what maybe heaven is gonna look like, right?
Mm.
And, if those creatures are totally possible and probably are in heaven,
Okay,
and I see the distinction between that and how God created us.
okay,
It's in His own image, and it draws me out to believe it shows a separation of the uniqueness of His bride versus the imagery of the creatures in creation that will be in heaven.
oh, okay. I think that's an interesting thought, yeah.
Verse 14 says the living beings ran to and fro like bolts of lightning. So I think of it as almost like teleportation.
Here you go, there's the quantum physics stuff again. I don't think we have to get this all figured out, by the way. This is not, my goal is not to get this all figured out. Yes?
My question is about the living beings. I mean, it talks about they're in the midst of living beings. Are there not living beings there too? I mean,
Is there such a thing as a not living being? A dead being? I think that, again, what we're looking at is kind of Genesis 1 language where you've got all the living creatures. And so I think you've got in our, now I moved my notes, but there's no fish, so that's interesting. But you've got birds, and you've got creatures that would be in the behemoth category, the big land creature category. So I think when I read that and I hear it, it makes me think of Genesis 1. I'm not sure if there were also dead beings, and if that's the right way to talk about them.
Not running around.
Presumably not running around like lightning if they're dead.
Well, we don't consider animals beings.
We don't.
Being is a measure of self-awareness.
Oh, I'm not sure.
But they have faces of men.
But the scripture says they're beings, calls them beings in Genesis 1.
Yeah, I think that.
They have nephesh, which is, they become living beings. That's what the scripture says.
I think
He's the same 4 living creatures in Revelation,
referring to
4:6.
Both.
They're similar.
You look at Hebrew, it's both.
All right, hold on. Living beings. Here we go. We are not making it through 3 chapters tonight. That's okay. It's good to.
But no wheels.
Wait for it. I'll get there.
Chapter 1.
I know. Yeah, so it doesn't. I don't think that we want to read too much into the idea of being and does that imply consciousness? It is just haya. That's used for all kinds of different creatures. So living creature would be a fine way to translate that in verse 19, and that is used in Genesis 1.
And the spirit was in their wheels, their spirit. So it was one whole thing somehow. The wheels and the beast above with the.
It's all connected. There's a beautiful synergy there in the interconnectedness. Oftentimes in the scriptures, when things are not right in the world, there's a reversal of Genesis 1. So in Genesis 1, call you later, Mom. In Genesis 1, the man is to have dominion over all the creatures, right? Okay, so then when things are going wrong, we have these beasts that threaten. So in the book of Isaiah, Leviathan is a problem. Lilith is this weird desert monster thing. Behemoth is out of control in the book of Job, and I think particularly of Daniel chapter 7, these wild beasts who are ultimately conquered and come under the submission of the Son of Man, right? It's the disorder and then the reordering of creation where the beasts are in their place and in proper order. I think Ezekiel, that's a part of what's going on here is, wow, these beasts are, we've got kind of creation-like language, but they're not in rebellion against God. They're forming his throne, and the Spirit is at work, and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I do think that's a glimpse of a foreshadowing of the new heavens and the new earth, where creation won't be in rebellion against God or the Son of Man anymore. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if they really didn't know what they were seeing. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
they're trying to describe what they're seeing with what knowledge they have.
Yep.
It's kind of like John in Revelation, you know. I mean,
Sure.
he sees the future, but he doesn't know what. All he can see is something that's doing something, but he's describing it in terminology that he knows at that time.
Yep. His. And there's one more thing I think that's right. I think it was meaningful to him in some way. There's one more way that we went a different direction in our earlier conversation about what significance might there be with the fact that there are these sort of mutant-looking beasts that guard the entryways to Babylon and things like that. I think this would be tremendously encouraging to Ezekiel and to anyone who's reading it, who may be in exile with him in Babylon, going, oh, yeah, the gates of Babylon are impressive and they're intimidating, but the one who truly sits enthroned on the even more marvelous, even more spectacular beast is Yahweh, is the one true God. And I think that would be he may not completely get what he's looking at, but I think if he did see any similarity between what he was describing and the gates of Babylon or the wall carvings that he had seen in these nations that were a threat to his people, I think it would be to say, Babylon's impressive, but God is more. And so he may not have got it all. And I think we could go to Revelation and say, oh, maybe we could understand a little more from John's vision, that John understood more than Ezekiel did. But I think he got something. And so I think that would be part of the encouragement he would be getting from this. Yeah.
Well, how did he see the Spirit? I mean, was this...
Quantum physics, I don't know.
But, because he said, wherever the Spirit led them, they followed.
Yeah.
So he saw that. Either he saw something, or I don't know. How do you see the Spirit leading them
Right.
without knowing what it was, knowing who it was? And
Somehow that's clear to him. I mean, I think it's kind of like, how do you depict wind in a painting? Like, somehow you can do that, but obviously you're not really painting the wind. There's some effect of the wind that you're showing. So I imagine there's something like that.
It was obvious who it was, because
he didn't have any questions.
He didn't have any question. He said, wherever the Spirit led, they followed.
Yep.
The clouds and lightning.
Yeah, whatever it was obvious that it was the Spirit. It was obvious that he was leading, and obviously they were following him. So I mean.
Okay. Yeah. Yep.
That's kind of weird. I mean. Yeah.
I think it's interesting that the wheels were described as sparkling beryl. That could have a connection with a mineral Eden. And beryl is a very clear jewel.
Yeah. Beryl is mentioned in Genesis 2, I think, isn't it? Or is it not? I think it is. I'm not sure. Okay, so let me read a little bit of the verses that follow, okay? Starting in verse 22. Now, over the heads of the living beings, there was something like an expanse, like an awesome gleam of crystal spread out over their heads. And under the expanse, their wings were stretched out one toward the other. Each one had 2 wings covering its body on the one side and on the other. And I heard the sound of their wings, like the sound of abundant waters as they went, like the voice of the Almighty. A sound of tumult, like the sound of an army camp. Wherever they stood still, they dropped their wings, and there came a voice from above the expanse that was over their heads. Whenever they stood still, they dropped their wings. Now above the expanse that was over their heads, there was something resembling a throne, like lapis lazuli in appearance. And on that which resembled a throne, high up, was a figure with the appearance of a man. And I noticed from the appearance of his loins and upwards something like a glowing metal, and looked around that looked like fire all around within it. And from the appearance of his loins and downward, I saw something like fire, and there was a radiance around him, as the appearance of a rainbow in the clouds of a rainy day. So was the appearance of the surrounding radiance. Such was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. And when I saw it, I fell on my face and heard a voice speaking. So another hard to get your mind around all of this, right? But spectacular vision. There's a couple things that I just want to mention because we're about 5 minutes from trying to wrap up. Here, I do think we see some more language reminiscent of the Exodus period. So in Exodus 24, there is a really fascinating story that we don't always give a lot of attention to, but it's the affirmation of the covenant, and Moses and the elders are called to the presence of Israel, presence of God. Sorry, in Exodus 24, verse 9. Then Moses went up with Aaron and Nadab and Abihu and the 70 elders of Israel, and they saw the God of Israel, and under his feet there appeared to be a pavement of sapphire, as clear as the sky itself. He did not stretch out his hand against the nobles of the sons of Israel, and they saw God, and they ate and they drank. And it's one of those stories that you read and you go, I'd like some more detail on that. Exactly how that went, as it seems to break some rules about seeing God and communing with God, right? It's not the way that normally goes. In fact, a little later in Exodus, Moses is only allowed to see the back of the Lord. And yet it's the presence of God, similar language, this crystal spread. Some have thought that actually Moses and the elders maybe were kind of under that. There's sort of this protective barrier almost there. Not sure. But the idea, again, of the movement, the sound of an army encampment lends credence to what Roger was talking about, that, these animals, maybe they are sort of like the representative heads of key tribes. Tim mentioned that also. They are this host moving through the desert. That might be significant because Ezekiel is now outside of the promised land again, looking to return, looking for that return. And so this might be a hopeful vision of something like that going to happen again. What else stands out to you in these verses in the next 2 minutes? Radiance.
It's interesting that he's seeing all of these things going on, and weird, for lack of a word, to him, to see it for the first time. But he doesn't show any emotion or anything about it until he sees the glory of the Lord. He's on his face.
Okay.
So all this stuff that he's never seen before, he's seeing it, doesn't impress him as much as he sees the glory. I mean, which is very impressive when you're reading it, but when he sees the glory of the Lord, it's boom.
Yep. Yeah. Similar to John's response in the book of Revelation. Yeah.
I wonder with the radiance, if that's where some of the artistry in the Middle Ages showing Christ with the radiance in the artwork came from.
I do think that places like here and the book of Revelation that speak of a similar kind of radiance, sure, I think that fits. So, Steve, did you have your hand up? You didn't. Okay, I just made that up. Do you want to say something anyways?
There's also a reference to seeing God face to face in Genesis 30 by Jacob.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, when he wrestles with the man and then he says, apparently that was God. Yeah. And interesting then, this figure with an appearance of a man who is, what's going on with that? That's Jesus is, of course, the correct answer. But this is the Old Testament, right? I mean, this would be a pretty stunning. This would be stunning. Okay, so as we think about what this meant for Ezekiel, how would this be? I'll tell you what the next 2 chapters are about. We'll look at them next week. He's about to be called to a task and be told, by the way, Ezekiel, nobody's going to listen to you. These people are a bunch of rebels, but you're called to be a watchman, and you need to do your job so that the blood of these people is not on your hands. And you need to go and preach what I tell you. Why start with this? Why would Ezekiel record this first, and why would God give this vision first before he tells them of that pretty miserable job that Fernando referred to?
The big idea. I mean, there's something bigger out there than your present situation.
Okay? Which is a really important thing, not only for Ezekiel, but for all of us to keep sight of in some way, right? Like when everything seems to be going wrong, when it seems like what you've been called to do is sort of a nightmare and the world's falling apart, to keep, oh wait, but God, He is on His throne and He is at work. I mean, that's going to be really important for him to keep perspective. Mark?
Yeah, I think just like the book of Revelation. I think it wasn't written necessarily for us to know the future what is, but it's given to us so that we can have faith, and He wants us to know this is going to happen so that we don't have to fear. This isn't something that's out of my control.
Right.
It's just randomly happening. This is my plan. Just like what we see going on today in the world. Things are happening. He's putting them all into order. If your politician doesn't get in, it's okay. He put that person there.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, and He's wrapping things up, and it's okay.
Yeah. Well, the whole genre, so there are other books that they're not inspired, they're not God-given, but they are what we would call apocalyptic literature. That is actually like a genre of literature that Jewish people would have been aware of that was intended to give you a heavenly perspective. That is very much what Revelation's about. I think that's what Ezekiel is doing as well. A lot of prophecy isn't always about us being able to calculate everything out, as much as it is to say, oh, let me give you some heavenly perspective on what's happening right now and what's going to happen so that you don't lose hope and when it starts to go that way. Yes, Steve?
And as you alluded to at the beginning, Ezekiel studies a lot of Leviticus, and Leviticus 17:19 calls for us to call out wrongdoing, regardless of, or we're going to be like the watchman, we're going to be responsible if we don't.
Yeah.
But the fact that we do absolves us of their wrongdoing.
Right. You do your part.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I think once you realize the glory of God, all others are minor. It's like when Jeremiah pointed out, this is God. You're not.
Yeah.
Everybody who fights against you, you're not. They're not. This is God. And so when Ezekiel sees the glory of God that falls on his face, he doesn't look at the glory of all those people who are yelling at him and not listening to him and saying, it's basically, you're nothing. I'm listening to my God,
Yeah.
who I need to obey. not you guys who I don't really care what you think. I'm just gonna go ahead and speak what I speak.
Yeah.
Because he told me to,
Yeah.
you know, so you can't not obey God once you see something like what he said.
Well, and I mean, we read in Isaiah 8 where, you know, God is to be your fear, your terror, your dread, and then he'll be a sanctuary to you, right? I mean, this is scary. If you read this and you try to imagine this is scary. I would be terrified. If I was Ezekiel, I would have fainted way before, you know, verse 23. And the point is, okay, that's the God that's calling you. That's the God that's sending you. And that perspective is critical, because now the gates of Babylon don't look that scary after this vision, right? I mean, now the Assyrians and all their depictions, they don't look that scary after this vision. And so one of the most practical things that you and I can do is worship. As a pastor, oftentimes I feel this pressure, like, I've got to have some answer for you, because, guys, we're all going through all kinds of crazy stuff in life. And it's hard. And the truth is, I don't really know, practically speaking, what each one of us needs to do in every one of the situations. What I do know is that if we will worship God, if we will look to him, getting a vision of him puts everything else in perspective. I was very encouraged early in ministry to hear of a pastor who preached a sermon on a text like this, like Ezekiel, just about the glory of God and his radiance and his majesty, and then found out that in his congregation, just that night before, a family had suffered a tragic accident. Multiple family members had died, but there were a couple family members who came to service, and he didn't know about any of this. And he just thought, wow, like I didn't say anything to, comfort them or to help them with any of that. Sometime later, he spoke to that family and said, no, that's exactly what we needed. What we needed was just to be reminded of God's greatness and his glory and his majesty. And so I hope that's encouraging to you. I believe that is at least part of why God gave this vision to Ezekiel at the outset of what was going to be a very difficult ministry. And I think that, again, just practically speaking for us, the big practical thing is let God reset your perspective on things and marvel at him and wonder. And it's okay to even wonder, to read this passage and go, I don't really know how that works. But it's amazing, however that's working. That's really more the point than trying to figure out how we're going. And not to knock your question, Adele. How are they going in the same direction? And I don't know how that's happening. So very good. I hope that's encouraging. I look forward to getting into chapter 2 next week. Father, we come to you and we are amazed. It is with good reason that you call upon us to listen to your word, to think on your word, to roll it over in our minds, to try and imagine it, to try and fathom what you're saying, because what you're saying about yourself puts so many things in right perspective. We understand that this vision was given to Ezekiel and recorded that we might too be edified and shaped by considering it. So Father, I pray that each one of us would maintain a perspective on our lives and our world that doesn't lose sight of the fact that you are God in heaven and you are on your throne and you speak from the beginning what will be in the end. You know the beginning from the end. You know the end from the beginning. You know it all. And so we can take great comfort knowing that you are enthroned. You are holy, you are glorious, and you are majestic. And we stand in awe of you. I pray that you would incline our hearts to serve you and to trust you. Keep us as we go from this place, I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. If you are able-bodied and you can help, we are are short-staffed on custodians, and Jeremy, he's teaching here at 7:30 tomorrow morning, so he has to actually be here.